What's up, guys? Harley Rocks here from Rock Rage Radio, here with the punk rock MBA, Finn McKenty. What's up, man?
Not too much. Just finished my workout, enjoying a delicious Diet Coke. So here we are.
Healthy. Gotta love it. So I was doing a little reading. You actually have a college degree, yeah?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So tell me how you got started into everything that is the punk rock MBA.
Well, to make a long story short, I started out making fanzines back in the day, back in the 90s when I was in high school. And basically the bands that I wanted to interview or that I wanted to read about, nobody was writing about. And I was like 15 or something at the time. And I said, well, if nobody else is doing this, I guess I'll do it. And so I just like wrote them letters because this was in the 90s, and I did interviews with them and sold a few thousand of those through the mail back in the day, which like actually is in a lot of ways harder than doing YouTube. So I'm like kind of amazed that I ever even pulled that off. Then after fanzines kind of stopped being, a thing, I did some blogs. And then after blogs stopped being a thing, I was like, well, I guess people are on YouTube now, so I'll try that. And it worked out, and here we are.
That's awesome. So, for anybody who might be wanting to get into kind of what you do you have any advice for them?
If you're talking specifically about YouTube, I think, or well, really any kind of content, you just got to start. There's a lot of people who sort of are perpetually stuck in the planning phase of like, oh, I'm going to start this thing, and I've got 20 ideas for videos written out and this and that. And like, that's cool. I get it. It's scary to start, but you just got to start and accept that most likely, people are not really going to care for a while. It took me probably about 9 months to start getting any real traction on YouTube, which I consider to be like pretty fast. It takes a lot of people longer than that. And the only reason that I was able to do it that quickly is because I'd been doing this for like literally decades, before I made my first YouTube video. So just expect that, it's probably going to be kind of tough in the beginning, but if you just keep doing it, I mean, the thing that kept me going is I was like, I know that if I keep doing this, eventually it will work. And I'm just not going to give up because I don't know. Do you know who iJustine is by any chance?
Who?
iJustine.
I don't think so.
You might remember she had like a viral video in like 2007 of her like reading her iPhone bill, and it was like 150 pages long. Anyway, I heard her say like, basically that of like, if you just don't quit, it'll eventually work. And I was like, well, I guess I'm just not going to quit. So I think that's the mindset you have to have.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that's kind of a thing with most things, actually,
right.
Leading into some of your content, for a lot of the up and coming bands and stuff, just really not giving up on that.
Sure. I mean, you take a band like Einstein Kills, if you guys are familiar with them, they kind of blew up in 2018, but they started in 2001. So by the time, they were like, a lot of people thought of them as like a newer band. Like, no, they were around for 17 years before they really got to the level they're at now.
Yeah, which is cool, actually, talking about them. That's actually one of the first bands I got to cover at the final Warped Tour.
Okay.
Was when the Silver Scream came out, and just like their whole concept was just so cool. Just all things horror related, which, I'm about that. So,
yeah, I mean, it really, and for anybody who's not familiar with the band, the horror thing was kind of always a little bit in the background with the band, but they didn't really focus on it the way they do now until that album. That's the one that kind of made everything come together for them. So I think that's another takeaway is, for any kind of creator, really anybody running a business of any kind or just trying to do anything, you're going to have to like whatever you think the idea is now is almost definitely not what it's going to end up being, right? Like the videos that I made at the beginning, which I think are all like private now, so you probably can't even see them, but the videos I made in the beginning are totally different than the ones that ended up actually getting traction. Ice Nine Kills was like a ska band in the beginning.
Yeah.
that wrote songs about like skipping school or whatever,
Yeah.
you know, and then 15 years later, they got traction as like a horror themed metalcore band, completely different from what they set out to be. And I think you'll find that with a lot of, you know, just really any project in general. I don't want to say that it's just like throwing crap at a wall and seeing what sticks, but it's a little bit of that. You know, you just got to experiment, and you'll be surprised at what works.
Yeah, definitely. I was actually checking out your cover tier list a little bit earlier, which I think is really cool that like a lot of metal bands are starting to, you know, venture into doing the covers. You know, a little, you know, history about a lot of the bands that I deal with are, you know, cover bands, you know, that like you had said in your video, get paid a lot of money.
Probably make a lot more money than most real bands. Well, I shouldn't say real bands, but you know what I mean. Sorry.
Yeah, but it's really cool, like, you know, kind of as a, I guess, radio person to kind of work with some like tributes, and then there's the cover bands and stuff. So, you know,
I bet you those like Journey tribute bands playing a casino, you know, in I don't know, San Bernardino, probably make literally 10 times more than like established metalcore bands playing, you know, 300, 500 cap venues.
Yeah, that is true. And unfortunately, something I've seen a lot, especially with the touring bands, is venues taking merch cuts.
Yeah, it sucks.
It's like how they make their money, you know? So,
I mean, I get it if it's so my thought on that is, for anybody who doesn't know, the way that this works is, let's say that Harley and I have a band that plays at the local venue that's, you know, a 500 cap venue where a lot of, you know, kind of metalcore bands or something might play. And we sell a t-shirt for $30. The venue will take, say, 20 or 30% of that, you know, for the privilege of giving us a Walmart card table in the corner of the room. And their rationale for that is like, well, we don't really make that much money off of ticket sales and the bar and all that stuff. So that's the only way that we can make this, you know, economically viable. I don't know whether that's true or not. If it is true, I would say, well, that sounds like a problem on your end that you need to figure out. Like, if you suck that bad at selling drinks, that's not my problem. Now, I get it. Where this started is with like stadium and like arena type venues where they would actually sell the merch for you. They provide the staff and stuff like that. So that's fine. Like if it's a Taylor Swift show, you just give them the boxes of merch. They set up, you know, the merch booths around the venue. They have the staff. They do everything. Cool. Yeah, of course they deserve to get paid for that. But if all they're giving us a card table and some crappy little 50-watt light bulb in the corner of the venue, like, I'm sorry, you don't deserve a cut of the merch for that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I just found it. I couldn't believe it. There was even one venue a buddy of mine's band played at in Florida that didn't even give them free water. I'm like, are you?
There's a hose out back. What more do you need?
Yeah, I know. No, I was just shocked because the majority of venues like I've been to, water is always free for the bands.
I mean, it's like literally the bare minimum. Water and a bag of Doritos, you know?
Seriously though. But also I was, you know, I've been following you for a while, so there were some definitely Stark videos that I love. So I noticed that you have a bunch of videos centered around one Ronnie Radke.
Yes.
So I really enjoyed like kind of the aspect, you know, specifically the rise and fall of Ronnie Radke.
Okay.
But then I think I saw another one saying that you're kind of a bit of a fan of him, right?
Well, like, to be honest, I don't really listen to Falling in Reverse. I like Fashionably Late. I like that album. The other, like, I don't, it's like what I like about Ronnie is that he is, number one, willing to actually like stand for something, you know, agree or disagree with him. You know, he's willing to actually take a stand. And I feel like right now in the rock scene in particular, people are so afraid of offending anyone for any reason, you know, that they won't. And I know tons of people, I talk to them privately, and they have, they'll say one thing, and in public they'll say nothing. And I get it. Like, I'm not trying to call them out, but it's just unfortunate that that's sort of the way it is like, you have to be so, it's like walking on eggshells. You have to be so afraid of upsetting anyone, because if people on Twitter get mad, then all the blogs will pick it up, and then people don't want to work with you because you said the wrong thing and it pissed someone off. And I'm just not with it, and Ronnie is not afraid to say what he thinks. And again, you can agree or disagree with what he thinks. I'm sure he would agree that there's times where he probably loses his temper and says some things that maybe he shouldn't say. I'm sure he would agree with that. But, at least he's standing for something. The other thing I appreciate is that, we live in a world in which everyone feels like they can sit on the sidelines. And if you're a public figure, they can say whatever they want about you. They can make up lies. They can just say nasty things about you and whatever. And you just have to sit there and take it. And I'm sorry, but that's BS. That's not the world that I want to live in. The world that I want to live in is, if you say something, you have to answer for that. And it doesn't matter. Like, I think it is total BS. The idea that, like, this whole idea of like punching down is stupid. Punching up, like, oh, so you're allowed to just say whatever you want about Ronnie or me or anybody else because you're a nobody and we've done something, and that means you can just say anything you want about us? No, that is not how it should work. So I think it's great that Ronnie claps back and puts people on blast for saying dumb stuff and lying about him. And, I don't really talk about this in my videos, but people lie about me all the time. Like, you go on Reddit, there's all kinds of, they call me a groomer and a transphobe and all this crap that's totally untrue. And that's why I'm so, like, I guess I relate to Ronnie so much, because I mean, he gets it way worse than I do, but I get a lot of it. And it's not okay. Like, we do not want to, like, imagine if you woke up one morning and people called you all kinds of, like, accused, like, if people want to say I'm ugly or whatever, that's fine, whatever, I don't care. But if you accuse somebody of doing something that could, like, cost them their career, that's not cool. What if you woke up tomorrow and people on Reddit were saying were accusing you of being, a predator?
Yeah.
And you're wondering, like, oh, am I going to get fired tomorrow over this?
Yeah.
Like, it's not okay to lie and slander and defame people. And that happens to Ronnie all the time. How many people call him a murderer?
That is true. I've seen
a
that
lot.
Like, if you read the comments on, like, some of his videos on, like, TikTok, I'm just like, really?
It's a lie.
Yeah.
And so, like, with that video, the point I was making is it's not even really about Ronnie in particular. It's about just this culture where people feel like they can just sit on the sidelines and lie about people. And today it's Ronnie, but tomorrow it might be you. You meaning anyone who's listening to this.
Yeah. Yeah, because it actually reminds me, I got to photograph for, all 4 of the bands on the Rockzilla tour. But he had said during the show, he said, to everybody, hey, raise your hand if you ever talk shit to me on Twitter. And then it was funny. That was a lot of hands raised too.
Yeah, sounds like something he would do.
Yeah. But then he led into it saying, well, you bought a ticket to my show, so thank you.
Yeah.
Like, thanks for the support, basically. So I think it kind of, he definitely promotes the whole, like, haters are kind of the biggest fans.
They are. And for him, it works because, his job is being a rock star. Now, and so, we don't have to feel too bad for Ronnie. But the point is, what if it's you? You know what I mean? That's the real problem, is that the same thing that happens to Ronnie could happen to you. Somebody could just decide they don't like you, and I'm just going to make up some shit or pass along some rumor that I heard. And next thing you know, your boss is calling you into the office and it's like, Harley, we've heard some really troubling things, and you're like, what? I mean, that's the world we live in.
I know.
That just some random person on Twitter, that their word matters, and it shouldn't.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's kind of like, people hiding behind a keyboard, but it almost reminds me, I don't know if you saw, like, any of those TikToks about, kind of the cancel culture, and like people were trying to cancel Metallica over the
Yeah,
load
yeah,
album.
yeah, yeah.
I'm like, it kind of perplexes me about some of this,
So for anybody who hasn't seen it, there's a bunch of, some girl made this compilation of like, I don't know, I would say some sort of edgy, dumb things that they said in like the 80s and 90s. Okay. Like Jason, it looks like he's kind of goose stepping and Sieg Heiling on stage, I think. And like, Lars making I think it was Lars doing some sort of like Hitler mustache thing. And probably not, it's probably not great that they said those things. But again, this is in like 1989 or something. Does anybody really think the Metallica, which, she called them like old white men. Rob is not white. Kirk is half Filipino. Does anybody think that Metallica are Nazis? Does anybody really think that? If you do, you should probably just go dig a hole and jump in it and fill it up with dirt again, because like we need you out of the gene pool. If you don't think that, then why are you making this TikTok?
Yeah.
Well, we know why, because you get clout for sitting on the sidelines and repeating lies about other people.
Which will lead me into, so one of your other videos you did were your reaction to some of the metal TikToks.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious.
Thank you.
Like I see a lot of that too, just like swiping through. I'm like, I can't tell whether it's like actually a metalhead or are they just like an e-girl or what? Like what's going on here? But there are some good ones too though. What's her name? Jessica Conrad is one.
Yeah, she's great.
Does some amazing content, but yeah, no, I saw a couple of those, with the corpse paint and everything.
Right.
You look like you're about 15 though. Okay.
The thing that's just really fascinating to me is I'm 45 years old. Okay. I graduated from high school in 1996, and it is so strange to me to see that there's like 15-year-olds now who look exactly like the 15-year-old Metallica fans did when I was in like 8th grade, and I'm not putting them down. I joke about it, but I don't care what anybody, is into or whatever. It's just interesting to me. And I'm like, man, there's just this sort of archetype of, the Metallica fan with the kind of feathered mullet and, dirty little teenage mustache with the denim vest, and tight jeans with the white high tops that they started appearing, in the 80s when I was a little kid. And I feel like they're just never going to go away. That kid will always exist.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of come full circle. So like I'm a really big Motley Crue fan.
Okay.
So, I also work with a Motley tribute, so I got more like into it then. But then the movie came out in 2019, and I saw an interview with Nikki Sixx, and he said, even since then, whether it's because of the movie or, maybe their parents, that's what they listen to.
I think it's a lot of that, yeah.
Like, there's a whole new generation of metal fans, Motley Crue fans, whatever band fans like, we used to listen to back in the day. And it's so cool that it's still going, and, people outside of our, I guess, scene just want to say, oh yeah, rock's dead, metal's never, it's really not.
No, like, it's bigger now than I would say it has been in like 10 years, I think. Yeah, maybe even more.
Any social media, and it's alive and well. I photograph at a lot of different shows. I think the last one was Yellow Card and packed venue.
Yeah, Yellow Card has had this like resurgence too. It's a really interesting thing with sort of the younger fans in particular that I don't know how old you are. We're probably closer to the same age than not. And like for us, for our generation, anything that your parents liked was terrible. Like whatever your parents were into, it's garbage, it's crap. Like I wouldn't be caught dead being into anything my parents liked. And anybody older than me is stupid. And it's not like that for like kids, teenagers now. They don't see things that way. Like a lot of them are excited to be, listening to the same music as their parents and hearing about that stuff, which is kind of interesting. I'm like, what's wrong with you? Aren't you? You should be rebelling against me. I'm your dad. You should be telling me how stupid I am. But they don't see things that way, which is really interesting.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I was going to ask, just because you do a variety of different videos, besides like anything punk rock. So what's your take on, nu metal kind of making a resurgence?
Well,
this is back playing Aftershock next month. So
yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting. I mean, it sort of piggybacks on the last thing we were talking about, as far as I think a lot of the younger generation of fans are getting into it through their parents, which is interesting, and TikTok. But I think it's sort of like, the way I see it, when we're talking about the younger generation, maybe their mom or dad got them into it, and then they're like, okay, actually, this is kind of fun and cool. I'm going to make TikToks about it, and then their friends get into it. And then next thing you know, like you said, Limp Bizkit's headlining shows again, which is pretty interesting. I think a lot of the reason why that stuff is so popular is, well, there's a few reasons. Number one is, I think that was the peak of rock. Well, maybe not the peak, but the last peak of rock being like a spectacle. For sure, I think the overall peak of it would be like probably Motley Crue is probably like the biggest spectacle band of all time. And, for anybody younger who's listening to this, they may not realize exactly how big Motley Crue was, but like, I don't know, arguably like the biggest rock band on the planet, in like 1985 or something like that, playing like stadiums. Like, it did not get any bigger than Motley Crue.
Yeah.
But after that, I would say nu metal was kind of the last time that rock was that big and was that much of a spectacle. So if you look at a band like Slipknot or Korn, or Limp Bizkit, they look like video game characters, right? They look like you could select them on the screen of, the next whatever, like Street Fighter 6 or something like that DLC. Right. And I think that's a big part of it, compared to, most bands now just look like normal people off the street that could be baristas or something.
Oh my God. Yeah. So we were talking about this. I think the perfect example for me was like Ed Sheeran. Mm-hmm. He wears it looks like an average guy, right?
Yeah.
So, then I'll look at like, say, Motionless in White or, Ice Nine Kills, and like, that's not average looking dudes.
Right. You see those people, if they were wearing their stage clothes, walking on the street and be like,
yeah,
what's going on here?
But it's cool though. Like, I'm actually talking about Motionless. Whenever Chris unveiled his new hairdo,
yeah,
I'm like, yes. So we got a resurgence of Chester Bennington hairstyle from Crawling. I'm like, about that, totally cool.
I mean, like, that is actually a great example. The fact that somebody's haircut is like a point of discussion is great. Like, you remember when Metallica cut their hair?
Oh my God. Yeah.
And like how that was like such a controversy, there's like Rolling Stone articles about Metallica cutting their hair. And we can all roll our eyes at that, because like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what somebody's haircut is. But like, that's a good thing if people care enough about your image to like talk about it. Now, compare that with like whatever random metalcore band that's just wearing like black t-shirts and jeans, with beards, that like, there's bands that I have heard dozens of times that if you put a gun to my head and said, is this a picture of fill in the blank band, I couldn't tell you, because they all look the same. Now, there's nobody, like, whether you like it or not, nobody's going to confuse Motionless in White with any other band.
This is true.
Like, that's just the way it is. So I think that's a big part of why nu metal is more popular. Also, remember that was sort of the peak of the major label era. Like, it was starting to erode then, because this was after Napster, but still, this was the era in which people bought CDs, MTV mattered, magazines mattered, and these bands were just everywhere. Like Korn, remember Korn was on TRL constantly.
I do remember that.
Yeah, and they were right up there with like NSYNC and Backstreet Boys. They always said number 3 was the Korn spot, because like they oftentimes would lose to NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, which is like, that's pretty amazing for a metal band to only lose to the 2 biggest pop acts of all time, basically.
Yeah, and I was reading somewhere that actually, I think it was, what was it, in 2003, is it '03 or maybe 2000, whenever Hybrid Theory came out, that basically bumped off NSYNC and Backstreet Boys from being #1 on the charts
Yep.
for the albums, which was like huge thing because a little history about me. I used to live in England before I came back over here. So I was used to, like, a lot of the Brit pop and all that because it was popular. 14 years old, I got into Slipknot, never really looked back. So, fast forward to year 2000, Hybrid Theory comes out, and it just kind of like, I feel like broke those boundaries and was something totally different, especially in the nu metal scene.
Yeah. Hybrid Theory was the peak of. They were sort of kind of late to nu metal. Like they were probably like the last big nu metal band to come out, but they were also the biggest one because they had sort of a pop edge to it. I think I think mostly because of like Chester's vocals they're like edgy pop vocals to me, and they also just seem like really kind of nice, approachable guys in a way that, not to say that anyone in Korn or Slipknot isn't nice or approachable, but like, I'm sure I've never met them, but they seem like super cool people. But, if you're a mom or a little kid or something, Corey Taylor and his mask is a lot scarier than Chester or Mike Shinoda,
Yeah.
So Chester he looked cool, but he wasn't like, scary.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah. No, it's cool because like the way that they blended like Chester's vocals and Mike's raps and stuff just was something totally different, which I believe, even if you go further back to what I want to say, like Faith No More, Suicidal Tendencies, kind of influenced a lot of like today's like rap metal, like Hollywood Undead.
Yeah.
Which is really, really awesome, which funnily enough, I recently found their cover of Shout at the Devil.
Who, Hollywood Undead?
Yeah.
Who did one?
That's awesome. Because they made it their own.
Okay.
Like, really
Hollywood Undead is great. I feel like I'm the #1 Hollywood Undead fan. Like they're like a big band, but nobody ever talks about them. It's kind of weird. I think they're great.
Yeah, they have man, because I started listening whenever Young came out. Like that whole album was it's
great.
Fire. And I got to see them live. What was it? The first time was like 2018. And then again, for Rockzilla. And man, they're still going. It's awesome.
Yeah, they are.
So I can't wait to see them again live. But what about Sleep Token though? Totally different genre, but man, like I get I don't know how to describe it exactly because with our whole look on stage for the live shows, it's some people have told me it's like, oh, so kind of like Slipknot, they wear masks, right? I'm like, it's not quite the same, but there's something about the music and the look, and I haven't seen them live yet, but
I saw them, but it was in like 2019 when they were opening for Issues, and they were just like a tiny band at the time, so there's probably 150 people watching them, and I think it's just a different, people didn't care about them so at the time, so I think it's kind of a different experience. I haven't seen them since then. But it's been very interesting and surprising to see them take off the way that they have. It's surprising to me because their music is not like, it has a lot of accessible parts, but I mean, these songs are like 6 to 9 minutes long, and kind of like don't have a lot of structure and stuff, and a lot of, they don't do a lot of the things that you would expect a band to do. That is, I mean, they sold out like Wembley Arena in 15 minutes or something like that. They're killing it. So there are bands that kind of break the rules and get away with it, but like you said, they definitely have like the look. They've got all the lore, which I don't know all of it, but about the god of sleep or whatever it is, all that kind of stuff. People love that kind of stuff, and again, it does have that pro wrestling kind of factor, which I think metal has always been a very image driven genre. I think a lot of metal fans sort of, for some reason, don't want to admit that, but it's like, well, when has that ever not been the case? since, I mean, Black Sabbath being the inventors of metal, like their image was a huge part of it. And that's not taking anything away from anything. It's just like, it is a very image driven genre. A lot, Alice Cooper and, just go down the list. Like it's always been that way. So I think Sleep Token definitely checks that box. And I think they have a lot of parts of their songs that to me are very accessible in sort of a pop way. What I would like to see them do personally, and maybe this is terrible advice, they should, they're doing great on their own, so they probably shouldn't listen to me. But what I would like to see is for them to do something that is a lot more like focused, like take those like 8-minute songs and turn and just edit those down to like 3-minute songs that are like a little bit more structured and conventional, and then I think they would have something that has even more potential. However, they're doing great doing things their way, so what do I know?
So yeah, they're great. I can't, again, they're playing Aftershock too, so
Right.
It should be a good show. The Summoning is actually one of my favorite songs because it starts out like, totally sounds maybe like, metalcore a little bit, but then goes into that like one part that totally sounds like, what was that one song, like Astronaut in the Ocean type sounding thing, which, I found on TikTok as a sound. I was like, oh, so, it was a trend for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, so going over to all of your stuff though, so you're on Twitch, you have a Discord, which people can access actually through your Patreon.
Yeah, or you can just, there's a link in the description of any of my videos to my Discord if you want to check that out.
Yeah, so I saw on your Patreon that you actually, can review bands and art and stuff.
Yeah. Usually, I mean, I'll review anything. I was a graphic designer for 10 years, so I have a lot of experience, a lot of background in that. Usually people want me to review their music, which I think is kind of funny because, I mean, I'm much more qualified to review your art than I am visual art than I am music, but whatever. If people value my opinion, that's great. So yeah, I do that. Basically, the way it works is if you want me to review something, you just join my Patreon at the $10 a month tier. Every month, I do a post that's a call for submissions, where if you want me to review something, you just drop it in the comments of that post, and then I review them on Twitch, and then I post them on Patreon for everybody. And yeah, that's the way it works.
That's cool. It's really awesome, because there's a lot of, say, like unsigned / up and coming that will play on Rock Rage. But it's cool that you're doing that to, I'm sure it helps give them, more exposure and stuff.
It does, but really the intent is a review, not promotion.
Yeah.
So don't do it for promotion because there's going to be like 100 people that see it on Twitch, so it's probably not going to do a ton for you. Do it because you actually want to review.
Yeah, because it's always good to get like, somebody who maybe hasn't heard your stuff, like their opinion to, they might hear it differently than you do.
Yeah, exactly. So, take my opinion for whatever it's worth. But yeah, I'll give you my opinion for $10. Hard to beat that.
Yeah, definitely. So you also do some emo content too, like about the emo scene and the resurgence. I saw the video with, what was it, Johnny Gilbert.
Yep.
So yeah, tell me what you think about like the whole resurgence about that. Because I know, like, I remember growing up, listening to I guess technically it was the second wave with like MCR and Paramore. But now you have all these, I mostly see the up and coming bands on TikTok and stuff. Like there's Catch Your Breath, good example.
I don't know them.
Yeah, they dropped a song right around the time Bad Omens dropped Just Pretend. It sounds very, very similar, but that blew up on TikTok. They got signed. Now they're, they played a tour with Falling in Reverse. They're playing a tour with tons of festivals and stuff.
Got it.
But yeah, it's kind of like the new emo sound, I guess. It's interesting. It's definitely different than, probably what we grew up on. So
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think with the resurgence of emo, in particular, MCR, I would say is sort of the forefront of that. But it's kind of the same story to me as the nu metal revival, in that, we may think of these emo bands as being sort of alternative or something. I mean, and they are, but remember how mainstream they were. Okay, remember, like, Pete Wentz had a special issue of J14 magazine just about him, which was like a teeny. It's called J14 because it's for 14. It's for eighth graders. There's an entire issue of this teen magazine dedicated just to him. MCR played like the VMAs in 2006 or whatever. That was kind of their breakthrough moment. And Pete Wentz married Ashley Simpson and stuff. Like, this was like, and I mean, he has a kid with her. This is like very, very mainstream stuff that was part of pop culture, in a way that rock really just kind of isn't anymore. And I think that's a big part of it. And the bands were great. And you look at people, I mean, like Hayley Williams, I would say, is probably the biggest star of that whole scene. I mean, she's like a mainstream celebrity. You could ask just random people off the street, show them a picture, and they'll know who she is, which is probably not true of anybody else. Maybe Pete Wentz, but Hayley's a mainstream celebrity. And I think that's a big part of it. They're like, what has come after that would stick out in somebody's mind that people have more awareness of?
Yeah, I think
who's a bigger star in the past 15 years than Hayley Williams that's come out of the alternative music scene? Probably, I can't think of anyone.
Yeah, I can't either. I mean, for me, like, a lot of it had to do with her look, like the hair color. She was always changing it, but kind of stuck with that orange. Even now she's back to that color. So
yeah, I mean, it's really, again, I keep going back to image, but it matters. And I feel like that's something that a lot of rock bands now think they're too good for it, or they shouldn't have to do that stuff or whatever. And it's like, well, you got to remember, your job is to entertain people. And for right or wrong, people appreciate a show. People like, do you want to see someone who looks like me get up on stage and just stand there playing guitar? Who would watch that?
Yeah, which kind of goes back to like the whole Ed Sheeran reference.
Yeah, now, there are outliers like him where, but his songs are just so fucking good. Like, if you're as good as Ed Sheeran, yeah, maybe you can get away with it, but you're not as good as Ed Sheeran. Right. Like, whether you like his music or not, he is an absolute fucking god tier songwriter. Like The Shape of You, you don't have to like that song, but that's a song people will be playing at weddings for 30 years. They'll play that at the grocery store and Starbucks and stuff like that. Are you writing songs that are that good? I bet you're not. You might think you are, but you're not. And if you were writing songs that were that good, they would be popular. So there's the proof that you are not.
Yeah. But what were you saying about, like, a lot of those just, metal bands wearing just all black, where there's, not really any showmanship.
And your music is kind of mediocre. I mean, of course you're going nowhere. Like, your music is mid, you're unremarkable looking, you don't say anything interesting, and you wonder why people don't care. I mean, again, going back to Motley Crue, number one, they looked like characters out of a fucking, David Bowie movie, like the Dark Crystal or some shit, or fucking Mad Max. They looked just insane and larger than life. Number two, they lived like just absolute animals. And, again, whether you think that's good or bad is beside the point. The point is, there were huge personalities that did something, interesting. Even if you don't care about Motley Crue, you were hearing about them all the time on the news and stuff because they were smashing hotel rooms and just being fucking animals. Number three, their music is fucking amazing. Yeah. I mean, you like Kickstart My Heart, Girls, 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 even some of their less, it's still a big song, but like Same Old Situation, like, I would say that's kind of like a B tier Motley Crue single, is still better than 99.9% of rock bands now.
True story. Yeah, one of my personal favorite, which not, I mean, people have heard of it, but you think of like Theater of Pain album, you don't
Yeah.
think of Louder Than Hell. But you know, that was always my song. Um, you know,
My
because
personal favorite is Girls, Girls, Girls. I love that song. I
so,
haven't been to a strip club in a very long time, but I'm sure they still play it.
so is there a particular reason why that's your favorite?
Um, it's got it almost reminds me of like a metal version of ZZ Top, if that makes sense, because it has that kind of like groove. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Um, but yeah, it's just a, a very interesting kind of like a very interesting riff. It's
Yeah,
like
it definitely does.
it's weird. It's a really weird riff. Just a great chorus. The video is awesome. I mean, I think to me, it's just like the pinnacle of hair metal. Like it's that, or "Talk Dirty to Me" by Poison. I actually love Poison. I think they're great, especially those first like two albums. I think are amazing. But you know, Poison just obviously a little bit like cornier than Motley Crue, but I think Poison is awesome. Those songs are incredible.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, and the videos too were,
Yeah,
you know, what got me like where they kind of, I guess it was kind of like almost the, you know, the fisheye lens.
yeah.
What was it on Nothing But a Good Time? I
Hmm.
think that video.
Is that the
But
one at the beginning where he's like washing dishes? Or is that?
yeah, where he's like in the works in the kitchen
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
turns
And
on
he
the
tells, yeah,
radio.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And again, the image, like Poison took that whole kind of glammed out, you know, thing where they looked like female strippers. You know, they took that to the limit. You know, they're wearing like, you know, pink spandex with cowboy boots and like giant hair and lipstick. And, you know, you can like that or not like it, but you can't ignore that. You see a band that looks like that and you're like, especially in 1985, and you're
oh,
just
sure.
like, what in the living fuck is this? You
It
notice
kind
it.
of, yeah, it kind of reminds me of like Motley Crue's first tour where they did the mannequin decapitation
Oh,
scene. Had the
I don't know
real
that.
so they have this mannequin just like covered in blood, right? And um, and they take a chainsaw to the neck and they rip the head off, and just like Mickey's got it like on his chain, showing it to the crowd and everything. I was just like, whoa.
I'll tell you this. What Ronnie Radke is doing now is the same thing as what Motley Crue did back then. The difference is when they did Shout at the Devil, which is what, 1983,
No,
81 maybe,
no,
whatever.
because one was Too Fast for Love. I think
Oh,
it
oh
was.
yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, you're right, yeah. Anyway, like early 80s, whatever. Shout at the Devil with like pentagrams and stuff like that back in the early 80s was like incredibly shocking. Now nobody would, you know, would look twice at that. But in the early 80s, that was incredibly shocking. And what Ronnie is doing, and I am afraid to even say this because people get upset. I'm not saying that I agree with this or disagree with it, but him saying on Twitter there are only two genders is the equivalent of having a flaming pentagram on stage in the early 80s, right? Where you're
Yeah.
like, you can't do that. And he's like, fuck you. Yes, I can. Now, I'm not saying, again, I'm not saying I agree or disagree with that, whatever. That's not the point. The point is that he is doing something that is shocking and controversial by today's standards.
I mean, that's what gets headlines, you know,
Right.
like
And he's
those.
in the headlines constantly for that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. It kind of reminds me almost of the Corey Taylor MGK beef,
Yes.
like how that whole thing started. You know, I see. For me, I feel like, you know, because Corey ended up coming back and like, you know, apologizing, said he shouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
Okay, but I just feel like, at least on MGK's part, like was, you know, that was pretty much for the headlines. You
Yeah.
know,
And his whole like Eminem thing. I mean, like MGK, again, whether you like him or not, he's not somebody that I would want to hang out with, but he's great at being in headlines. You know, he's a striking, controversial person, and it obviously works for him. Again, like he's like, you know, a mainstream celebrity.
yeah, he is. It was interesting, actually. I got to see him at the Houston Rodeo back in March, which was interesting, at least at, from a reviewing standpoint, seeing that show compared to, the YouTube videos I've seen about his live shows, because it was a totally different atmosphere. They had the star-shaped stage that rotated around.
Okay.
But just the production was over the top, though.
Yeah, I've never seen him live. I've only seen stuff on YouTube, and I mean, I don't think he's the most talented musician. I think he's a very good rapper. I don't like his rap stuff personally, but I think objectively he's really good. His rock stuff, to me, he's just not good at it. But it doesn't but that's beside the point. He's doing things that make people talk about him. That's what's missing from all these bands now. I mean, people in rock are so fucking easily offended, and so just like when he complained about bands wearing comfortable shoes, everyone was so fucking offended. Like, are you fucking serious? Like, that's how thin-skinned you are now, that you are up in arms with the torches and pitchforks because MGK made fun of your shoes?
Wow.
How do you not have something better to spend your precious time on Earth than fucking getting mad about MGK's opinion on shoes?
I mean, yeah, it kind of reminds me. Escape the Fate used to have, two members, the Moody brothers. So they have their own band now, but they actually came out with a song that dissed Ronnie, not by name or anything, but just if you listen to the lyrics, it says, I can't remember what they called him, but with your Twitter fingers, with your Twitter fingers. I'm just like, oh, so we're calling out people in songs again. Okay.
Yeah. Well, hey.
Yeah, it's been a thing for a while.
Right.
Rappers did it all the time. Still do, I think.
Go for it. I'm for it. Anything that you look at Loudwire or something, and I'm not calling out Loudwire, but you look at the headlines and it's like, I feel like, what year am I in? They're talking about fucking D. Snyder and just the newest band in the headlines is Disturbed, and nothing against any of those bands, but just it's nobody is doing anything worth talking about. That's why Loudwire I guarantee you, if you ask them, they don't necessarily want to be talking about bands that are 20 or 30 or 40 years old. But it's like, well, what else is there to talk about? Basically Ronnie and Sleep Token doing things that are kind of interesting. And there's not a lot. I mean, those aren't the only ones, but there's not a lot of other people doing things that are worth writing about.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing right now is a lot of those older bands coming back, then Sevenfold's back playing festivals this year.
And I love them, but they're 25 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, if you asked Matt, he would tell you we would love it if there was some new blood to, take the headlines over from us.
Definitely. I mean, even, talking 20, I guess it was about 20 years ago, the first time I heard Kitty, they're coming out with a new album. I think it's next year, I believe. But, even that resurgence going back to, the new metal thing with, they played at Sick New World. They played it when we were right before that. It's just really cool kind of to even see the resurgence, just because, a lot of the newer bands, aren't really, like you said, making headlines.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, to me, I just don't understand. I don't understand. I mean, do you want to? It's you hear people, artists, complain all the time that they're not making the money they want to make and they can't get it, blah blah blah. It's well, but you know what the rules of the game are, and you refuse to play them.
Yeah,
I don't know what to tell you. It's like playing a baseball game, and you're like, yeah, well, I don't want to catch the ball, and we keep losing. Well, I don't know what to say. You can do what you want, but everybody knows, we don't want to make TikToks. Well, but okay, but then how the fuck is anybody going to hear your music?
Yeah, because that's actually the way I find a lot of these new bands. I mean, what was that one band? Dark Divine. I found on TikTok. You know, that band I was telling you about, Catch Your Breath, found them on TikTok. Like, it's a big thing. You know, there's a lot of bands that I've helped out, kind of a little bit older, you know, but they're just like, oh no, you know, we don't have a TikTok, you know, been thinking about starting one, but I'm like, just do it.
Right.
That's where literally everybody's going there. Like, I feel kind of almost more than like Instagram or Twitter.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what TikTok has, I don't know, well over 1 billion users now, and
Yeah.
music is like a core part of that app, right? As opposed to, say, Instagram or something like that, where, yeah, there's definitely music on there, but it's not really a core part of that experience. For TikTok from the beginning, you know, for anybody that doesn't know, TikTok, the American version of TikTok was originally an app called Musical.ly that was, yeah, that was for dancing. And then they turned it into TikTok, and it is what it is now. But so music has been a part of that app since day one, and it still is. And I just don't know what to say. Like, if you don't want to be where the audience is, well, what do you think is going to happen? If you're deliberately making the choice to avoid being on the platform where 1 billion people go to discover music, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, because I mean, like, being a musician, you're at that point, you're a personality. Like,
right.
You need to put yourself out there. Social media is the norm these days. You know, it used to be magazines back in the day, but this is the world we live in. Yep. So, you know, if you're a personality, you need to be on basically every social media.
If Nikki Sixx was starting his career today, do you think that he would, you know, turn up his nose at TikTok?
No.
No, he would be all over there doing the most outrageous shit you can imagine. He'd be getting kicked off TikTok for being too fucking crazy.
Oh, like Ronnie?
Yeah, exactly. Nikki Sixx would be on there fucking pouring bleach in his eyes or something.
Yeah, because even Motley Crue, they have a TikTok. Nikki Sixx's wife posts.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
a whole bunch of stuff. Like,
she's
you know,
pretty popular TikToker, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Brittany, what's her name? Well, whatever, doesn't matter.
Yeah, but I see like a lot of Nikki's stuff, like the backstage stuff. Like, he'll be walking to the stage with his daughter, and like his wife will video that, you know, and put one of their songs with it. And it's just really, really cool to see from that perspective. You know, like this stuff that a lot of us don't really get to see inside their, you know, famous musicians' lives. Or like even like Chris Motionless, he's on there. I saw Dave Mustaine's on TikTok. So
I gotta check that out. Here's an example. You remember, I think it was maybe a year ago or so, when Tommy Lee posted his dick on Instagram?
I didn't see that. I don't care to either.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've already seen it, so no mystery there. But, and I'm not saying, I mean, it was embarrassing and cringe and weird and stuff. But again, he made headlines. I'm not saying every band should go out there and post their dicks. Don't do that. But,
don't.
But, I mean, it made headlines. Here it is a year later. I'm talking about it. My point is that, like, getting attention, people like musicians believe that they're in the business of making music. That's only partly true. The first step before you can get anybody to listen to your music is you have to get their attention. And that's what I would say Motley Crue is probably one of the best bands in history of music at getting attention.
Yeah, definitely so. I mean, kind of like what I brought up from the first tour, like, you know, who decapitates a mannequin head with like blood and everything with chainsaw on stage? Like,
in the 80s.
I think that didn't happen. You know, Nicky lit his pants on fire. I'm trying to think of, you know, they have the, you know, half naked girls on stage.
Right.
You know, do like all the choreographed dances now. But, you know, back in the day, they had, you know, it was everything. The whole stage setup, Tommy Lee's drum kit.
Oh, that's right. That's right. His upside down, you know, drum kit on a, I don't even know how the fuck they did it. But
yeah, he had the, like in a
flying drum kit. Yeah.
Yeah, but then he had the roller coaster one. I think
Yeah.
one show he got stuck up there.
Right.
Ways that could go wrong, but it was still something that
Got to put on a show.
Wow factor.
Yeah, exactly. What's the wow factor? What are you doing that someone's going to go home and talk about, or better yet, make a TikTok about?
Exactly.
Oh, it's a bunch of guys that look like every other guy went up there and played songs that sounded like every other band, and they were pretty good.
Yeah. They're like they were okay.
Yeah, they were above average. Like,
Yeah,
that's not above average is not enough.
Yeah, because I've come home from shows like that sometimes where I'm like, man, that headliner, they were okay, but that opening band though, well, sometimes the openers end up blowing the headliner out of the water,
Sure.
which is insane. I'm just like, wow.
I mean, you should always try.
Definitely so. I'm trying to think of like that one show that I went to where that actually happened, but I mean,
it's just odd. There's this like culture of, it's not even modesty or humility. It's like a culture now in rock where it's like frowned upon to do things that are like interesting, basically. You know what I mean?
Weird though, because if you're not doing something interesting on stage, like what's even the point?
Right. Right. What are you doing?
Because that's like half the reason I feel, at least, say, we put together a show at X venue, whatever. You want the tickets to sell, you want people, to fill the venue.
And don't you want to entertain them?
Interesting. Then.
Do you remember Limp Bizkit's when Limp Bizkit did Family Values and they had the toilet?
Yeah. Oh my god.
They're like, oh, everyone says Limp Bizkit is shit. All right, well, let's go. God. We're shit. You're right. We're so shitty. We crawled out of a toilet.
Yeah. Oh my god. Those were some crazy, crazy things. And even like, talking about their look, Wes Borland's look.
Sure.
It's, completely
like a video game character.
Different than, yeah, exactly. I'm trying to think of some of those other bands too. Like, I mean, like even
Wayne Static.
Yes. Oh my god. R.I.P. But yeah, even I haven't had a chance to see them lately though. But I heard they're putting on a pretty good show.
That's what I hear.
Yeah, but even like Evanescence,
Sure.
She still puts on an amazing show. The look that she has during each show. I saw them like back in 2012, I think it was. But just like her costumes were elaborate,
Yeah.
Everything from, playing the piano for My Immortal and, going into.
What if she went up there wearing a hoodie and jeans?
Oh my God, I would be so bored.
Yeah, you'd be like, what? Is this like practice? What's going on here?
Yeah. I don't know if you've heard of that. There's a newer female artist called Scene Queen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because her whole, I've seen videos from her shows and just like, even her look is just really out there and, I guess creating like her own genre.
Mm-hmm.
It was really cool to see just because there's nothing else out there like that since like, the beginning of Katy Perry.
Sure. I don't like her music at all, but we're talking about it, so she's doing something right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, her music's interesting. I like the breakdowns, they're cool.
I like the idea of it. I just don't think it's very well done musically. It's a little bit, to me, a little bit heavy-handed of like, I'm a slut and I play metal. Like, all right, like I think you could do it a little. I get that idea. I think I actually think like Your Baby does that in a way that's more funny to me.
Yeah,
they don't like. I don't know. It's just it's difficult to pull that sort of thing off the right way. It just, to me, Butcher Babies does that a little bit better. But again, at least she has an angle. I respect it, even if I wouldn't necessarily choose to listen to it. At least she has a point of view.
Yeah,
because the fact that I care, like the worst thing would just be like, I have no opinion, like it or dislike it. If she makes me have any reaction at all, I would say that she's done something good.
Yeah, because it's just interesting, like, she posts about, like, for her fan base, kind of to like join the sorority type
Yeah.
thing. But, she goes from, I guess, kind of sort of rapping into these heavy breakdowns and screams and stuff. I'm like,
It's kind of like Falling in Reverse.
yeah, I guess kind of all stems from like new metal.
She's a little bit like man-hating, which I don't love.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the video, she's like, no man worked on this video. I'm like, all right, well, I guess you don't want me to watch. But again, she would like, I am an old man. Like she's probably not trying to speak to me. So the fact that I'm reacting that way of like, oh, I guess you don't want me here. She'd probably be like, yeah, I don't want you here. And I respect that.
Yeah, because she was even one of those ones who called out a band in a song without calling them out. But
oh, I remember something about that.
Yeah, it's the 18 plus song.
Right.
I was like, it was actually that stuff. I had heard rumors about this particular band.
Who was it?
I think it was All Time Low.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I had heard rumors about that because, Jack has all the bras on his microphone. And
a little weird. I obviously don't know, I'm not accusing them of actually doing anything. I don't know. But I always thought it was weird that they're, whatever, in their late 20s or something like that, getting these little A-cup bras thrown at them by ninth graders. And it's like, why would you want that?
Yeah.
It's incredibly strange to me. Like you can't stop fans from doing what they want to do, but like encouraging it is so odd to me. I remember, to his credit, you remember Never Shout Never?
I do, yeah.
So when he was like at his peak in, I don't know, 2011 or whatever it was, I remember interviewing him, and like everybody at the show was like 13. It was all like, 7th grade girls. And he wanted nothing to do with them.
Huh. Okay.
He was just like, dude, they're like little zombies. Like, I cannot handle them. Like, get me away from them.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's like an appropriate reaction.
Yeah.
As like a guy in your 20s, you should not want to be around like 6th grade girls.
Yeah, no.
That's just not enjoyable.
No, definitely not. But it's been great talking with you. For everybody watching, make sure you go follow Finn. So it's Finn McKenty pretty much everywhere except YouTube, right?
I have a Finn McKenty channel on YouTube too. So if you just search for my name, you'll find me everywhere.
Awesome. Well, again, it's been great chatting with you. I love talking music, and make sure you all go follow him on YouTube. Check out some of those videos because they're really, really awesome. But we'll catch up next time. Again, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
You too.